Okay, everybody, welcome to this Regional Transport Committee meeting on the 12th of September. We'll get the show on the road. And we'll start off with the first thing, which is our karakia. You'll happily join in with us. Mike will happily lead us off. Thank you.
He karakia timatanga, wakatokati ho kiti uru, wakatokati ho kiti tonga, kia ma kina kini uta, kia ma tara tara ki tai, kia iaki ana te atakura, e tio, e oka, e ahu, tuturu o witi wakamawa, kia tina, huie,
Thank you very much. Apologies. Do we have any apologies for today? I take it not. We'll move on. The next item on our agenda is a deputation, which is from Julia McLean. I see you are with us, Julia, so welcome.
Thank you very much.
With this, we will give you 10 minutes for your deputation, which includes time for some questions. So if you cut it off a bit shorter, if there are any questions from the floor, I'll give them that opportunity. So with that, we will hand it over to you and the floor is yours for the next 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. You run a slick operation there, 1 o'clock, boom, right into it. So I'm coming to you with the authority to speak on behalf of the entire equestrian community in New Zealand. And so please let that sink in, because that is no easy feat to unite an entire community on an issue. And that issue is our current status in transport legislation, which is an absolute failing. And it leaves us out in the cold with respect to road safety messaging. Primarily is, for me, my main focus right now, and it's turned into a full-time job by way of engaging with all the key stakeholders that have a responsibility to reduce trauma, serious injury, and death on the roads. And it's when I started capturing the near-miss data, the incidents, and the seriousness of what is happening out there, that I couldn't ignore it. And I reached out to the trucking sector, New Zealand Police, AA, NZTA, Waka Kotahi, to start creating a space in which we can share our road safety targeted messaging to community. But winding back to the very reason why I'm speaking to your road transport, regional transport committee, is the fact that I recognise from a grassroots level, bringing an issue to you, you guys have the ability to support and elevate it to exactly where it needs to sit, which is with the Minister of Transport and the Ministry of Transport. I would like to ask for your support on behalf of the equestrian community to support this legitimate case for our vulnerable status to be recognised in transport legislation, because currently, right now, we sit as an other road user, which has no benefits whatsoever. And we feel it out on the roads. We feel it when we come to the table and engage with local government, because really it's only due to goodwill there places and spaces provided for equestrians to get off the road and enjoy their recreational activity, just like a cyclist, just like a walker. I guess for me, as a former journalist, I was most excited when I read the UK Highway Code. Going into this, I had never spent time doing that. And then it was in May when I read the Victoria State inquiry into road user behaviour on vulnerable road users. Horse riders went into that, not a vulnerable road user. They were asked to submit. As a result of the incidents and the behaviours that they raised, the inquiry is recommending that they be a vulnerable road user. That messaging is explicit. Instead of having a sign of a picture of a horse on the road, that you have the words pass wide and slow. We can no longer assume that people understand what to do. You have to have explicit messaging. They also recommend that a vulnerable road user panel be established for transport planning to inform planning, which I thought was really informative. And in the UK, they go as far as a vulnerable hierarchy, and the Victoria State inquiry picked up on that as well. And the mindset being those who have the ability to cause the greatest harm have the biggest responsibility to look after. And I was so thrilled last week to receive a letter from New Zealand Trucking Association with that very mindset at play in a newsletter that they're rolling out to all their drivers, as well as a feature in their magazine next week. And so with zero road safety budget, I am very mindful that this is all about relationships. So whilst we fill the void for no road safety messaging and await legislative change to catch up and put us exactly where we need to be, which is formally recognised as a vulnerable road user and provided for by way of off-road pathways, we are working with the political arm as well. I've written to every mayor and chair in local government, and as well as political leaders across different parties who wear the transport hat and the local government hat. And I have secured support from all of them, including the Deputy Prime Minister and National Party representatives wanting to accept the petition on the 15th of October when my daughter and I fly to Wellington to give it to them. We also have an international petition running alongside because the international equestrian community is well aware of what we're seeking in New Zealand, and I've asked for their support. And that support has come through in leaps and bounds in terms of the pass wide and slow message that we are raising awareness for this coming weekend. So it's a UK movement and it's across the world now. Australia, America, Canada, South Africa, Ireland and UK. Over 200 rides have been organised worldwide to raise awareness of our vulnerability on the road and to message to drivers what we need of them, which is space, at least 2 metres, and slow down. I'm not going into the speed in which we need motorists to slow down because that's contentious and we don't have time for that, but it means slow down. And so that's where partnering with police and with NZTA, who have agreed to look at our road safety messaging, which for me personally is a glacial change. If NZTA starts to promote messaging instead of how to defrost your windscreen, we will be thrilled. AA posted just this week with our pass wide and slow message. It's had 333 shares. This is a community of horse riders that are starting to realise what is possible. And the support from regional transport committees is crucial to this conversation. I've presented to 7 of you, and there's a few more to go. All 11 will hear this consistent messaging, and I do hope that all will support. By speaking to the Auckland Transport Board, I didn't realise that the chair of that was also the chair of the Regional Transport Committee. So support from both arms came through. And really the feedback has been immediate. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with your team today. And I hope, that you can realise that we're doing our bit, but for too long it's been left and it's really dangerous on the roads. That is my primary concern for this work. And having a young person's voice at the table is really hard in local government, but my 12-year-old daughter delivered an exceptional speech, 3 minutes, to the Canterbury Regional Transport Committee. And I think without, unanimous support was given, because this isn't about this generation that I speak to, it's the people that come after as well. And the cycling fraternity are starting to realise that the pass wide and slow message applies, has good crossover to their world. So they're looking to stand with us as well. So I welcome any questions. And one more thing, media have a key role to play in this. And I've really empowered organisers of those 50 pass wide and slow rides across New Zealand to engage with media, to engage with local government, to engage with police. Some areas in New Zealand have been incredibly supportive and some have gone out of their way to make things really difficult. But we are rising above that, and we will raise awareness this weekend, even though the weather looks terrible. And rolling out the pass wide and slow vis vests, because we too know that we need to be visible. And the feedback I'm getting from riders who are wearing it is so incredibly positive. Cars are slowing down and they are moving over. We just need your help to formalise things so that behaviour change can actually happen, going forward.
Well, I thank you, Julia, and I think your message is getting out, and obviously with the use of the vests, that's working. Are there any questions from the floor with regard to what we've heard? Councillor Cloak.
I just want to thank you for your presentation, and I'd like to think the committee would support it. But just on your own personal visibility, you talked about the pass-wide jackets, etc., and the photos you show here are absolutely excellent. When we're on the roadways, we find that most times the horse riders are dressed in a very dark colour with nothing to support. It wasn't so long ago I was following a horse down the road and had high vis on the hocks, and you could see it from a long way away. It was just on dusk. So I think it's important to get your message out for personal safety as well as achieving this 2 metre wide where we can is most important. Be seen. But thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. And if I could respond, before I embarked on this mission, I spoke to a local farmer, and he was tremendous in terms of, the hock visibility movement. We talked about colours. I looked at the UK and the research that the British Horse Society had done with respect to colours, and definitely promoting an absolute non-negotiable with respect to these awareness rides, vis vests, helmets. And for me personally, the helmet saved my life. Visibility wise, we're rolling out these vis vests because instead of these ugly things sitting in your drawers, it's really important to take pride and want to wear it and see the benefits of wearing it. And that is what we are really promoting, and it's having an effect. So by all means, I understand what you're saying, and that is certainly my mindset as well.
Excellent. Is there any further questions? I take it not. I do thank you very much for your presentation, Julia, and we'll probably have a bit of a talk about it at the end of this session today.
Chair,
please do, and know that your support is really critical in all of this. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Chair, may I suggest that if the committee wishes to explore supporting the sentiments expressed by the submitter, that we're happy to go away and prepare a paper for the next committee meeting to consider. It's would be unusual to make considerations off the cuff.
Okay. I think that's probably a good idea. Management will go away and prepare a paper for us to come back to a follow-up meeting with regard to this. So I thank you very much, Julia, and thank you, Mike. Can I have a mover that the deputation was received? Councillor Cloak, seconded to Councillor Downhoven. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. And I did forget to mention we do have Lisa on the hot seat driving us today, so please be easy on us. Second item on the agenda you'll find on page 11 is the confirmation of the minutes of the Regional Transport Committee from the 13th of June. And the recommendations are firstly asked, are there any alterations or additions with regard to the minutes? Amanda.
Through you, Chair, it has me attending, but I would in fact an apology for that day.
Okay, we'll note that. Thank you. So there are two recommendations. The first one is to confirm the minutes of the 13th June meeting and note the unconfirmed minutes of the Taranaki Regional Transport Committee meetings held on the 8th of Feb and 18th of April, and they have been circulated to the three councils. Happy with those? Moved Councillor Cloak, seconded Mayor Volsky. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Item 3 on the agenda is the receipt of the minutes of the Regional Transport Advisory Group from the 15th of August. You'll find on page 17 in your agenda. And the recommendation is that we receive the unconfirmed minutes of the RTAG group held on the 15th of August. Are there any comments, queries with regard to their meeting? Councillor Downhoven.
Question, Mr. Chairman. Under the heading Waka Kotahi updates, part 5 of that report. It says there was a confirmation from the senior project manager that there will be no new centre median barriers between Hawera and Normanby. Has something been, I may have missed that, but has something been removed from the program, Linda, or is it simply that we're at peak safety?
No, you will be aware that when we circulated the initial draft, the concept designs, all had the opportunity to provide feedback into those, and there were some concerns about the inclusion of certain parts of median barrier on that stretch. That, coupled with the change in the GPS about how this government wishes to achieve better safety outcomes and the associated best use of funding to achieve those, means that those stretches will no longer include median barriers. So it will be focused on wider centre lines, wider roads.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, happy with it?
So could I just seek clarification through you, Chair? So what median barriers are there now? That's it. There will be no more like under this at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's, no, I do. I believe that it's all in, because I believe that the section that was originally proposed further north towards New Plymouth is now not happening either. But there's nothing planned further south now. That's my understanding.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anything further with regards to minutes? Could I please have a mover that we receive the unconfirmed minutes? Councillor Cloak and seconded Mayor Nixon. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item, item 4 on your agenda, which is on page 22. And I welcome Simon to come up to the table, and it is a update on Port Taranaki. I think there was a PowerPoint that at least was just getting a head round to fire up as well. So,
super. Is there a clicker?
Yeah, I'll bring it up.
thanks, Tom.
Thank you. And how long do I have? I'll know, so I know how fast to run.
We actually haven't got a time limit on you, but
Oh, brilliant!
if you see a few signals along the way, you'll pick up the
I'll go.
body language.
I'll go as quickly as I can.
When the
No
room's
problem.
empty, you've done your lot.
We're keen to hear what.
Or when the Uber Eats arrive.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to present. Simon Craddock, I'm the CEO of Port Taranaki, and on the first slide there is really just the outline of what I was asked to present. So I'm going to just cover quickly a little bit about the port and our performance and our situation. Talk a bit about the trade that goes through the port. We'll touch on the plan the port has as one of the nodes in a multimodal transport network. I'll talk a little bit about logs and dry bulk in particular, as those are the products that move on roads, and then I'm very happy to answer any questions. And feel free to hurry me up if you need the time. So look, I mean, just in terms of the business performance, the council is probably pretty well aware from recent updates. It's a fairly challenging time at the port. As we headed into last year, we thought we'd have revenues of about $60 million and profits north of 10 million. The bulk liquid trade through the port in particular has been very challenged with the gas situation and methanol, so our results have fallen quite a long way short of that. Revenues of 54 and a normalised profit of around 8.6. Of course, everyone's impacted by the tax change this year, and it's fair to say the outlook is not much more favourable. I think we're all aware of the situation with Methanex dropping back to one train. So that's the business environment, and in terms of what that means for our trade, this is the picture here. The blue line is really bulk liquid trade, which comes through the port in a pipeline and onto a ship. Everything above the blue line is dry bulk trade, so that's a fairly stable picture there. What else can I say there? So of course, dry bulk and log trade is becoming a larger percentage of our business as that liquid trade decreases. So it's a fairly challenging outlook for us, but looking back on the year that's just gone, we've had some good progress in a number of areas, including expanding our marine services business, working on our vessel fleets, looking at cost reduction. And of course, we remain focused on various opportunities that we see in the medium term, and I'll cover those off in a minute. But just to reiterate, looking forward, the outlook for bulk liquids is pretty challenging. So our FY25 goals are to focus on new opportunities, reduce costs, and try and make sure the port's as efficient as possible for our customers. Our priorities for the year ahead, although it only goes up to number 5, there are 7 up there, and the first one really is to remain safe at all times. That's our top priority and colours everything we do. And then down the bottom there, making sure we're caring for the environment and the community and maintaining our social licence and keeping the port a clean place for everyone. Within our business priorities there, the top 2 are really focused on our top line. We're looking at how we can deliver more services, particularly in the marine environment. I characterise it as going after a bigger slice of a shrinking pie out there. So we're well positioned to try and serve more of our customers' needs, and that's particularly OMV and the work offshore. We want to try and develop our existing revenue streams, not just the trade revenue streams, but also looking at our property portfolios and what we can do through the cruise industry and the likes there. Number 3 is becoming increasingly important, which is focusing on costs. And like Methanex, we're launching processes with our staff, looking at how we can be more efficient and reduce costs. But I suppose number 4 there is the bit that docks with the interest of this committee, and we need to take a long look forward. The port's there forever, regardless of what the trade situation is, and we need to make sure that we're set up to serve the needs of the customers that we have and the region. So we're focusing particularly on the offshore wind industry, often in the fairly, we hope the medium term, but could be longer term, renewables, mining opportunities, decommissioning of offshore assets, and things like aquaculture, which, while not core business for us, could suit our infrastructure. And we're certainly very keen to work with central and local government to advance our planning and the region's interests. So if I just talk briefly about the multi-use, how we see our plan going forward, we are trying to make sure we're as flexible as possible. That's not something traditionally ports have been very good at. Ports typically take a long time to develop and typically look at supporting one industry. We're in a position where there's considerable uncertainty in the future. So we're trying to position our infrastructure to respond as quickly as we can to market needs. And the things that are on the horizon are resources projects that are coming through the fast track, onshore renewables projects, also fast tracking more traditional approaches, offshore wind, which we're a big cheerleader for, but there's quite a big process to go there before I think that will go. Obviously, the regulations aren't there, the electricity market settings not quite there, but we want to make sure we're ready to go. Log storage, I'll come back to in a minute. Oil and gas decom is something we're looking hard at supporting, not because we want to see the fields be decommissioned necessarily, but if we can reduce the costs for decommissioning, that helps extend field life. And there's also something that I think will benefit the country if we can bring that activity ashore and into the region rather than going offshore on heavy lift vessels. LNG import and diesel storage are broadly under the banner of energy security, and we have a role to play there. And beyond that, sort of power to X projects. So that's the broad landscape we're looking at in the medium term. Much of that is port specific and not really connected with the roading network, but we are critically dependent on roading infrastructure. And so we're very interested in the resilience, capacity, and efficiency of the roading network. This slide is really just summarising where we're focusing our attention. We want to make the maximum use of the existing infrastructure that we have at the port. So particularly as we face the offshore wind industry and think about oil and gas decommissioning, the Blyde terminal, which is formerly the container terminal, is now used for log storage, is probably the most flexible part of the port. So we see that as being a multi-use hub. When offshore wind or decom comes along, of course, it's currently covered in logs, and we will need to find another home for those logs. We do have some concepts, but it's probably not appropriate to go into detail here. What I would say is if we can transfer the logs to some other location, either on or off the port, we have the opportunity potentially to make greater use of the rail corridor to the port, which would potentially remove a very large number of truck movements off the CBD roads. But there are quite a few hurdles, quite a lot of planning, quite a lot of work with customers to go before that can necessarily come to fruition. We're trying to use our Newton King tanker terminal, which is the next one up, for LNG concept studies, and then our Motorola Wharf is potentially well suited for iron sand export. I'll just give you a sense of what some of these things look like. Many of you will have seen these sorts of things before, but the offshore wind industry is moving forward. Very, very large components coming in on ships. It's that photo there with the monopile. It's hard to pick up the people in that shot. They're so small, but those components are unlikely to leave the port. They're unlikely to go on the road to be stored. They're likely to be laid down and then moved off to offshore locations. There are a couple of concepts around Port Taranaki. One that it would be used as the base for a whole project, or another concept where it would be used as part of a multi-port concept. And we're working with developers on all of those concepts. Oil and gas decom, very hard to know when that would happen, but certainly, again, using the terminal there, I think there's also an opportunity if that decommissioning comes ashore to use the rail network to recycle much of that material, potentially up to New Zealand Steel. LNG import, again, this probably wouldn't touch the roading network, but I did just want to say, while I mention these things, it's very much at the concept level, and although there's some political drive behind this as a concept, there's a lot of work that has to be done in terms of safety and making sure that these concepts are very well thought through. So we're doing some of that work now, but we're very conscious that there are legitimate community concerns about these sorts of projects. So we want to take that seriously. So for us, what's required? We've got in the centre of all those ideas, there are some common elements, and they're around strengthening our wharfs to accommodate project cargo and construction vessels, strengthening the quayside to accommodate increased weight, looking at hinterland storage options for logs, and of course natural gas projects. We want to make maximum use of the rail network where that's possible, and I've mentioned the possibility to get trucks off the road. If we look at the log traffic just for a second, we've done this study a couple of years ago. It shows the distance from all the different ports of the different forests. And basically, within our region, we can see there's a solid 10 years worth of forestry in the region that is likely to come through our port. After that, the bottom right graph shows in the mid-2030s a decrease in the available wood within the region, which would lead to probably a natural decline in the traffic through the port. This is the value chain or the supply chain really in our region for forestry. It's fair to say it's fairly complicated, although physically it's reasonably simple. Commercially, it's quite complicated. And what drives forestry to go to one port or the other at the margins is largely commercial and based on where it's most efficient to go. So the efficiency of the roading network, the ability to get a truck onto the port and off the port quickly so that truck can do 2, 3, 4 trips a day is very important for the efficiency and viability of the forestry industry. Most of the wood that goes out through the port goes to China. We have 4 exporters on the port. We have 62,000 tonnes of storage on the port. At the moment, we're absolutely chock-a-block full of wood because of some bad weather that's prevented vessels from getting in. But 200 million in export value and around 38,000 trucks, 54 vessels a year. In terms of dry bulk, that slide is really just saying what goes through the port and where it goes to. I'm not the expert on these next 2 slides, but I think graphically they're quite interesting because the product that comes in through the port is coming from all sorts of areas around the world. It's all sorts of different products. And once it gets here, it's actually traveling almost all through the North Island from our port. Some of the product comes through our port and heads to Northland, some down to Wellington. So it's not necessarily just coming into the region. And in terms of the dry bulk product, that obviously goes in through the port now, around 25,000 truck movements and 53 vessels. So the situation summary for us really, the economy is definitely changing. The mix of product that we're going to see through the port is changing. We need to be able to respond to that. We've got a medium-term plan around how we can support the region, but we are definitely critically dependent on roading networks, and we support moves to improve the safety, resilience, capacity, and efficiency of the network. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Craddock? Going forward, Councillor Donhoven first.
Oh, Heath, I'll start with one. In an earlier slide, you had the one about LNG.
Yes.
You had a note on the side, Maui and Torn pipelines.
Yes.
Is that proposing to use the Torn fields as underground storage for LNG? Well, it would be CNG at that point, wouldn't it?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, we think one of the advantages of the Taranaki location is that it connects into the backbone of the gas network. One of the critical problems is fuel and fuel storage.
Yeah.
And so, and this is very much, we've got out the crayon. So this all comes with a heavy disclaimer, but both those pipelines enable gas to travel down to the Ahuroa flex gas storage facility, whether the actual molecules or a gas swap. There's, I believe, about 12 PJs of storage there and 65 TJ a day injection rate. So certainly it could play a huge part in bolstering the security of the system.
And potentially possible at Maui?
The Maui pipeline? Yes. So both those pipelines are in good condition from the port. It may not be necessary to use them both. Certainly one is larger and more capable than the other. But that's more of our first gas question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, Mayor Volsky?
Thank you, Simon. A really good report. I've probably got 100 questions actually, but I'll just stick to one. If you're reconfiguring the port and you're looking to create space by moving logs away from the area, if you were looking at an inland storage facility or hub of some sort, and then presumably railing them into the port, that would be I think something that would be fantastic news for lots of road users, because we've long argued that we need to get logs or logging trucks off the roads, and particularly out of the central and from a city. I would think that's a big bonus. But have the discussions with Kiwi Rail to date, again, it's a shame they're not here, have they to date indicated that they have perhaps land available where they could set up a hub, or are they potentially looking for land?
I think that's a key commercial and logistical question. I think our concept is to free up the Blythe terminal. The options are to store the logs somewhere else on the port, potentially the power station, or somewhere off the port. When you look at Wellington, there's the Wainawa railhead, and logs go from there on rail down to Centre Port. In Gisborne, they have an inland location which involves trucks. I think we're open to anything, and we need to work with our customers on this. It's fair to say we haven't engaged, given the length of time it is away at this stage with our customers. But certainly anywhere along the rail corridor, I think between the port and Inglewood would be suitable as well. I think that's got the benefit of shortening the travel time for trucks from the south as well, making their journey more efficient. Would enable the last part to the port to be done as a rail shuttle operation. There's quite a lot to work through there in terms of the logistics, sort of the time and motion study. Typically, the exporters resist rail because it's extra movements. The logs obviously come out of the forest on a truck, and if they're to go on rail, they need to be put down, picked up at the other end. So it's extra cost. But I can see the benefit for the community, for the transport network. In terms of Kiwi Rail's involvement, I think we'd like to ensure that rail line remains viable. At the moment, there's no rail traffic coming to the port. There's no logs coming on rail at all. With this concept in mind, though, we'd like to make sure that the rail network remains viable. And I know there are cost-cutting moves within the rail network. So that's a question for us. And whether it was Kiwi Rail operating that shuttle or another company, I think we'd be open to that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. In relation to cruise ships, it strikes me that the cruise industry is quite fickle, and that they choose where they want to go for all sorts of reasons, and particularly the ones where they've got onshore things that their passengers can do and they can clip the ticket on the way through. That's something that this region lacks. How much investment is Port Taranaki looking to make in facilitating cruise ships, just given that stop-start nature that they've demonstrated in the past?
Yeah, we're not making any particular physical investment, such as a cruise terminal, given the small number of vessels, but we're certainly working with Venture Taranaki, and there's a strategy to get to 28 by 28. So I think last year we had 8. This year coming, we've got 6. We'd like to see that grow. The investment really is more in the form of a good visitor experience, and certainly we're scoring well as a region in comparison to other ports, and it is a bit of a case of building up the industry. The cruise lines are interested in commissionable product that they can sell at each port. The region needs to know that cruise is going to be here for the long term to be able to invest and provide that product. So I think it's a case of building up the industry that way.
Yeah. Thank you.
And Mayor Nixon.
Thank you, Chair. Good presentation. Thanks, Simon. That was really interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think congratulations is there for part of what you had in your first slide was offshore and emergency towage. I think you guys managed to get a barge free.
Well, we'll take some of the credit. It's not our vessel. It just happens to be moored in our port, but we love it when they say a tug from Port Taranaki.
Yeah, that's why I was saying correct me if I'm wrong.
OMV's vessel. Yeah.
It looked very good for us. Hey, just interesting me where you're talking about increasing some area there for offshore sand mining, obviously, iron sand export. I mean, obviously, this is topical at the moment with them applying for fast track process and that. What we've been led to believe is that that's possibly just an offshore operation where they'll bring up iron sand onto a vessel, dewater it, poke it in another vessel, and it's gone to Aussie and Australia. So why do you have, and I know you've got a question mark there, why do you have an area for iron sand export?
Yeah, so that one's not for the offshore project. I think you're right in terms of the logistics there.
Okay.
It's more thinking about some onshore projects which are in the feasibility stage.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Downhaven.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to come back, if I could, to the log trade. As you mentioned in passing in response to Mayor Volsky's question, we have a huge problem in New Plymouth with hundreds of logging trucks per week, in fact, probably per day, going through the centre of the city, essentially. And it doesn't matter where they come from, they all go through the centre of the city. It does seem to me that one of the issues might be where the weighbridges, where the logs are charged, are weighed, and the payments go back to the landowners or the owners of the logs. If there aren't any other weighbridges around, each truckload from each plantation has to be weighed at the port. So if there are to be alternatives, there would need to be some investment in scales to calculate the weight and therefore the payment to the owners of the logs at each unloading point. Am I right in that?
I'm not.
And if so, would it be possible to have a loading point at, say, I don't know, Waverley, Hawera, Eltham, Stratford, Inglewood, wherever it's convenient on any of those points, so that we could hub the logs miles away and then take them by rail?
Yes, we're certainly very keen on the idea of hubbing them and bringing them on rail for the reasons you mentioned, and we actually have a rail line that runs right down the Clyde terminal. So part of the concept I was talking about before might include actually loading logs directly from rail onto the ships. But I think in terms of the question of the weighbridges, we do have a weighbridge in the port, and it's it's a commercial proposition for us. But there are also a number of weighbridges not at the port. There's one behind the Waitomo service station as you head to the port, that's owned by Cube. There are also third-party weighbridges dotted in different locations. So McCarthy's, I think, has set one up in Levin on the way to Centreport. So the weighbridges aren't necessarily at the port, and they can be just about anywhere. So I think it's not necessarily the weighbridges that prevent the hubbing and transport by rail. It really is more the logistics, cost, and flexibility aspects.
But it seems like sheer madness to have all of these trucks pounding up and down the highways, or just pounding the highways, from all over the province, and most of them follow a rail line for most of the journey.
Yeah, and when you talk to forestry owners, managers, and exporters, certainly the feedback I've got, and it's only a few anecdotes, is that they're looking for logistics providers who can support their business, and part of that is about timely transport, efficient transport, and caring about the inventory. As I've learned in the last few years, a log is not a log, it's not a log. There are a lot of different grades of log, and part of the issue they've had with railheads is stock management, just essentially customer service, as well as cost and flexibility.
Sounds like it's a good case for a study of how that might be able to be improved.
Yes, and certainly I think what we've seen is about 6% of the logs until 9 to 12 months ago came through the port on rail. Kiwi Rail adjusted their pricing, and all the exporters, managers, and forest owners just moved back to trucks. So I think it is a very competitive business, and that's certainly a key aspect.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll finish it off with a question. I think if you could give us a bit of update regarding the Blue Highway, if any modelling has been done and what sort of an impact that might have on the transport or the roading network around it.
We haven't done any specific modelling. I mean, we're very excited about the prospect of the Move Logistics service between New Plymouth and Nelson, which was supported by the government, part of the $30 million that was allocated to coastal shipping. Unfortunately, my my personal view is these services have to be commercially viable in their own right if they're to get off the ground and endure. So I think we've spent a lot of time on that proposal. Nelson spent a lot of time on that proposal. And really, I think when it came to it, it obviously wasn't commercially viable, or it would have gone ahead. So I think we're enthusiastic about supporting coastal shipping. We'd love to see more of it, but I think it has to be the right solution.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further. I take it not. I thank you very much for your presentation, and obviously created a lot of interest within the province. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
No problem. Could I please have a mover that we receive the presentation? Thanks, Mayor Nixon. Second to Mayor Volsky. All those in favour, please say aye. And against? Carried. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 5 in the agenda, which is the Regional Land Transport Plan for 2024. You'll find that from page 24, and I have removed the last recommendation from this report, as we have a report on that later in the agenda. And I think, Fiona, you're going to introduce the report and keep us up to date.
I certainly can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. So this item is essentially just closing the loop on the Regional Land Transport Plan for 2024 to 2027 being fully published and now in effect. I'm obviously going to note and apologise for my error at number 5, where I promised the published document as an attachment, but then failed to deliver it. So my apologies. What I have provided is a link through to the web, where you can certainly download a copy, or if you're particularly excited, I can print you a hard copy. In terms of also that, we're advising that the final GPS 2024 for the corresponding time period was released on Thursday, the 27th of June, and came in effect on Monday, the 1st of July, which with Matariki was a total of 0 working days later. Key changes from the draft GPS are outlined in number 1 within the memo, while the details of the final GPS at a high level are attached to the memorandum. One thing I would really like to reaffirm is that while the strategic sections of the RLTP, as has been developed by this committee, remain constant for this 3-year period, changes to the proposed activities within sections 5 and the funding components within section 6, which relate to it, are inevitable. So given the evolutionary nature of such projects, there is definitely going to be change. And as mentioned there, this is evidenced by the fact that we have our first formal variation later within the same agenda. So it is very much a living document. The strategic sections stay as they are, but the funding and the program of activities will change. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions with regard?
Or demands for lots of hard copies? I can understand that too.
Any questions with regard to the land transport plan? Mayor Volsky.
Yeah, just a couple of comments actually, and, quite cynical ones. I noticed in the part of this report, there's an inclusion there, the government policy statement on land transport summary at a glance of funding changes. And it's page, can't bring it up, I'm sorry, but it's in that report. But the opening line there, the NLTF revenue will increase to 22 billion over the period of 3 years, an increase of 30%, 10% a year. And I couldn't help but think that the revenue comes from taxpayers, road users, and anyone else who contributes in some way through levies and so on. And it seems to be okay for the government to put their prices up 10% across every year for 3 years. But when councils do the same thing, we get lambasted. So I thought that was interesting. The other one was just in regard to the roads of national significance and regional significance. I don't think I saw one with Taranaki's name beside it, which I guess means that we're insignificant.
Thank you. Mayor Nixon.
Thank you, Chair. The table, through you, Chair, the table you mentioned, Fiona, and the changes made to the final GPS, the final bullet point relates a bit to what the Chair just questioned in the previous report. was funding for coastal shipping activities through a new $30 million coastal shipping resilience fund over 3 years. Will that in any way perhaps rekindle the blue highway that we were just talking about and perhaps make that a little bit more viable for us?
I'm going to make a quick comment before I pass to Linda. That 30 million was taken from rail to put into the coastal. So one's offset against the other, and 30 million wouldn't go very far.
Quite great point to reference. So it wasn't an increase in funding. Through the draft government policy statement to the finalisation, coastal shipping was not originally included. It was added after negotiations with the Minister for Regional Development. How that fund will now be allocated is still to be confirmed between Minister for Regional Development and Minister for Transport. I don't know, but there's an opportunity there for you.
Councillor Donhoven.
Two questions, one related to that issue of the coastal shipping. It seems to me that there's a big resilience hole that New Zealand could easily fall into. If, for example, an earthquake hit in Wellington, such as what happened in Christchurch some years ago, and took out the port facility, which was the old ferry terminal in Christchurch, but if the same thing happened in Wellington, there would be no link to the South Island for freight transport other than coastal shipping. So wouldn't it, from an NZTA point of view, be a really good idea to have a blue highway link, at least between New Plymouth and Nelson, but potentially also between New Plymouth and Victor?
Through your chair, probably not my wheelhouse to answer that. That's a policy level decision. We're required to give effect to the government policy statement for transport, and that is not prioritised. So that would probably be one that I would recommend noting to Ministry for Transport and the Minister himself, I think, Councillor Dunbowen.
And my second question, if I may, Mr. Chairman, possibly also for Linda, the comment made by Mr. Craddock in passing in response to Nievolsky's question about rail was that it led me to have some concern that we may not have a rail line servicing the port in the very near future. And if 30 million has been taken out of rail funding to supposedly help coastal shipping, what's the likelihood of several of the smaller rail lines in New Zealand not being able to continue to be funded?
I can only make a minor comment on that the Rail Network Investment Plan is partly funded through the National Land Transport Fund. So that is the investment through NZTA is detailed in the NLTP, but I couldn't make comment on the real strategic investment decisions.
It's up to them. Councillor Harris.
Through you, Chair, just on the topic of rail, I made a note that in the June meeting, it was an invitation was extended to Kiwi Rail to present at this meeting. I think given the conversations we've had about rail, their presentation would probably help us in some of those avenues. Have we heard from them as to when they will do that?
Chair, and I'm looking at Fiona and Lisa, if I go out of line here. We continue to extend invites, actively encourage Rail to participate in these meetings. They've got standing membership, if I'm not mistaken, of this committee. Their presence, we don't have any apologies. Their engagement. Oh, have I gone wrong?
If I may, just this time around, Rail had agreed to present, but the ARNIT, which is the rail equivalent of the National Land Transport Program, was not available in time. So they have deferred that to December when that will be available and they'll be able to give a more fulsome update. But notwithstanding what Mike was saying, it has been very challenging.
Suffice to say, we will continue to engage with them and encourage them to actively participate in this forum. But sometimes you can drag horses to water, but you can't necessarily make them drink.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman, given that they may attend in December, I would hate them to come and give us a generic presentation of what rail does, and then go, oh, we don't have any answers to your question available right now. The next time we come, in 5 years' time perhaps, we'll give you some answers. Why don't we put some specific questions to them, such as, will the decision to cancel the purchase of new rail ferries affect the viability of the rail network? And if rail funding is constrained, is the line from the main trunk line to Port Taranaki in any danger? Those two things are absolutely vital, notwithstanding the fact that 17 million tonnes of freight go every year by rail. And if you took that off the rail, if the rail became unviable, then we'd have an extra approximately 500,000 truck movements per year, mostly very long distance, for the highway network to cope with. So we need some solid answers to some of these issues.
Chair,
If I may just jump in.
Fiona's-
Chair. So at your last meeting, you may recall that you received an item from Lisa, and that did outline a number of specific questions that we had for rail, and those have been sent to Kiwi Rail for them to include within their update. So that certainly is our
Expectation.
Thank you.
But it would be really good to reinforce that so that they don't.
I think it has been done each time.
Direct
I'll
answers.
acknowledge that, so they will do that. Mayor Nixon.
Thank you. Just further on that, Chair, perhaps closer to the time when that agenda's being set for that, could those questions perhaps be sent out to us that are going to be posed to them, that as members we can make sure that we're happy with what's being covered and perhaps add anything to it. I did have a bit of success with them a while ago and actually managed to get them here. Whether that was just more good luck than good management, it perhaps was, but if you're struggling, maybe I could try again, because I'd love to have them here.
Fiona will
They need
put
to
the
be-
top of the phone list, and also
Your charm, Phil.
I think we've
No,
we've had the acknowledgement as well that you will circulate a bit of the
Absolutely.
questions, and if you feel there is something that is missing from that, feel free to get in contact with Fiona and we'll make sure it's added.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further regarding the regional land transport plan? I take it not. So we do have 3 recommendations, and I'll put the 3 recommendations together. So all those, could I have a mover and a seconder? Mayor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Cloak. All those in favour, please say aye. And against? It's carried. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 6 in the agenda, which you'll find on page 38, which is the emergency works funding policy update. And Fiona's still in the hot seat, so we will pass it straight back to her.
Happy to step down.
Thank
So
you.
this one, there's 2 main points with this item. First is we're seeking retrospective endorsements of the committee's submission to Waka Kotahi's Emergency Works Investment Policies Consultation. So you may recall from last time, the submission was drafted following a decision at that meeting and was circulated to members via email for feedback. The final submission is the first attachment to the memo, which we're seeking your retrospective endorsement of today. The second point from this item is that many of the changes proposed within the review were put into effect from the 1st of July. So it was a pretty short consultation time and a very short turnaround time before some of those were put into effect. So we've provided a high-level summary of the outcomes, and a summary of the consultation feedback is the second attachment provided by Waka Kotahi. Myself or Linda, I'm sure, can answer questions.
So thank you. So yeah, our main thing to decide is that we retrospectively approve the submission made on the emergency works funding. Are there any questions or points, Councillor Donovan?
No, I was just going to move.
You're going to move that? Thank you. Those recommendations. Seconder for that?
Happy to, but I would just
Mayor Volsky, and we have some.
in a comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe of interest to the committee. Last Friday, Nixon and myself had the opportunity to meet with the Minister for an hour in Wanganui, and one of the issues I raised was regarding this particular funding change, and I put to the minister that the shifting of the effect of these policies is effectively shifting the burden of payment from the Land Transport Fund to ratepayers. And just another one of many unfunded mandates that we get handed. And he conceded that that actually was the case and the wrong words were there when the word savings were put in there, because they're not saving, they're in cost. The cost still occurs. It's just a transfer of who pays.
Government savings, I think.
But the other comment that he made I thought was really interesting, and that was one of the reasonings behind it was that it was to act as an incentive for councils to spend more money in preventative measures. So effectively saying that if you spend more money preventing these events, then when they do occur, they'll occur less often and be less expensive to remedy. And he pointed to the example in Auckland where the flooding occurred and said that had the council cleared culverts and had appropriate drainage in place and so on, that the extent of the flooding wouldn't have been so high. But I thought you're really drawing a long straw there when you say that it's an incentive, effectively a incentive saying that you'll get penalised if it does occur. And how is it an incentive? What are we supposed to do in Eastern Taranaki, for example, where you've got narrow roads running around the side of a hill? It's not much more than a farm track in some cases. What are we supposed to do in terms of prevention? Curb and channel them, or what are we supposed to do? I mean, I don't know. Someone needs to tell Mother Nature. And he acknowledged that, but I thought that was really interesting, that it was actually an incentive. For a short submission.
Thank you. Anything further? We do have a mover and a seconder for that, so I will put that. Those in favour of those recommendations, please say aye. Against?
And I'll abstain from the first one on the submission, please, Chair. It's probably not appropriate for me.
Noted. We'll move on to the next item of the agenda, which is our speed management update. Again, on page 55. And Fiona, while you're still on that seat, I'll pass it to you again.
Lovely, thank you, Chair. So this item is simply providing the committee with an update on national speed management policies. As you will likely be aware, the Ministry of Transport released the draft Land Transport Rule Setting of Speed Limits 2024 for consultation mid-June through to the 11th of July. The sector provided a lot of feedback, and some of these are attached for your information, including from community boards of New Plymouth District Council, which the council resolved to present to you for your information, along with one from Te Rua Kahika, which is the regional sector. So the council ourselves did not have sufficient timing or resource in order to make a submission on that. So one of the key aspects of the 2024 rule is that regional speed management plans remain optional rather than mandatory, as under the 2022 rule, and this is generally well supported around the sector and around the country. We're now all awaiting the release of the final rule to know where things stand, and more information will be brought back to you when it is available.
Thank you.
The recommendations. Pretty straightforward.
They are fairly straightforward. Are there any questions, queries with regard to that?
Chair, I didn't note where the government said it wouldn't be an unfunded mandate, and that they would be paying for the reinstatement of what we've already done. Did I miss something?
I think so.
No,
Would you like to comment, Linda?
it wouldn't be appropriate prior to the rule being confirmed.
Thank you. Mr. Donovan.
I noted the comments of Fiona in regard to the very short time for submissions, actually less than a month. I think from memory from the 14th of June to the 11th of July, if my memory serves me right. Given that we have a bill which we've already been told currently before the House, which we've already been told will not be passed through its first reading stage, and it has a 6-month select committee period and submission period. It does seem to me rather bizarre that speed limit setting, which affects every single driver in New Zealand, we did not have time to put a submission in because of the very short notice and the very short consultation period. And it does seem to me that our community did pretty well to get some submissions back to us to help us in that process. But the timeline was so short that no council in New Zealand could really have done a proper democratic process in preparing a submission. And I think that's a point that we should make quite strongly to the Ministry of Transport and or the Minister.
I'm quite happy to get something drafted up along those lines and we can forward that. I don't know if it makes any difference, but be happy to do that. If you're all in favour.
I don't think, through you, Chair, I don't think it causes any harm. And you might want to take some comfort that it's longer than it has been for some other things.
True.
Thank you for the comfort on that, Mayor Volsky. It's made us feel a lot better.
But my point is, this is something that affects every single driver in terms of the changes of speed limits. Not to mention the road safety issues as evidenced on television in the last few days by the trauma surgeons and various other school committees and councils that have come out against the proposed change.
Thank you. So I think we do have the recommendations on that from page 84. Councillor Cloak has moved that and
Second.
Nixon has seconded that, and I'll put that all those in favour, please. Aye. Against? It's carried. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item, which is the RLTP implementation updates from page 92.
No, skipped one, Chair.
Skipped one.
Yeah. The request to vary the regional land transport plan, page 84.
Page 84, yeah, the request to vary the land transport plan. And Liz is going to, I think, highlight that to us.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou. Yeah, so we've put together a request for variation of the regional land transport plan, and I guess it connects really nicely to what Fiona was referring to in terms of the evolutionary nature of the RLTP. This was put together by myself and Lisa Moore from NZTA, requesting a variation to add to the RLTP the section of State Highway 45 from Barrett Road to just east of Morley Street to complete the corridor for the cycling safety improvements that we have consulted with our community on, have resolved by our council on, but with the change of government, we didn't get the full release of funding that we were anticipating. So we're a little bit short to deliver the full protected cycleway corridor, and we are just coming to request a variation to the RLTP for that. And I'm happy to answer any questions should you have any.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions with regard to that variation? Everyone's happy with that? So recommendations have been moved by Mayor Volsky.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Dynhoven. No further comment. Those in favour, please aye. Against?
Simple as.
Carried. Easily done. Thank you, Liz. So now we'll move on to the RLTP implementation updates on page 92. And we will ask, so we've got first MPDC. Pass it over to Stuart.
And this will be, this is the AO's report. I actually take it as read. It's we completed the going to the right page, excuse me. Yes, guide me to the right page.
I'm sorry?
Which page?
94.
94.
Cool. Thank you. Very good. So last year it's quite old now, really. If you think that the financial year actually finished in July, so our work finished as projected. We with it, we expended the NZTA allocation that we had. We did go a bit higher than that as planned, but we were below actually the council's budget, which was a little bit higher. So on maintenance and renewals, which was good, everything is. We've got a indicative. Now we've actually got a defined budget going forward as well. So I know this is where it's a bit late now. This information has gone from being indicative to defined last week. Came to it. At the moment, we're going through the process of seeing what that means. The maintenance operations renewals is roughly in line with what we were expecting from NZTA. The one that we are having to grapple a little bit more is the low cost, low risk budget, that it is quite low. And there will be some decisions the council needs to make some decisions on what to do there and those parts of it, but it's in the paper that I'll have to take to council. As I said, I'm just doing the calculations at the moment, but that's the big item that got the big hit. That low cost, low risk, which we've got a very small budget for the next 3 years, and in fact, zero for year 3. So probably leave it at that. There will be the integrated transport strategy that we've got. It will be going to council and coming to this committee. We will be progressing it and then passing on to Kotahi. We won't be necessarily waiting for any endorsement. It probably doesn't need an endorsement by the board. So we're just doing it so it becomes a strategy for us in New Plymouth and for the region. But it'll always serve as a purpose for any future applications. That'll always be there, that there's something that's been approved by council itself, and it fits with the region. And when for any future applications for funding, that'll always be a backup document to validate any applications that we have within ZTA. They're aware of it, they've been part of it, but we'll just progress without having the endorsement of the board because it's really not necessary. And the focus is in other areas, so it's probably to let us progress. We should just advance with it anyway. And that's about it. Take any questions that you may wish to ask.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Rory?
Yeah, Rory, just as the chair, just over the years we've sat here and heard the concerns of all the councils around our area about the impacts, and you mentioned it here too, of the forestry industry. And there's been a lot of discussion and media comments and everything else. How are we making any ground collectively to get some, and I know Stratford have made a decision to get some buyback or payback. This seems to be coming up all the time, and a lot of the damage, especially in these rural back roads where we have limited heavy freight in the past, but it certainly does show the weaknesses on those pavements. And this is probably something you're doing in New Plymouth, Stratford are doing it in Stratford, Hara are doing it in Hara. Are we getting closer to do a collective of how we going to manage that? And I know many years ago when I was a boy and come to this council, we got them to do a forestry survey and working out the best routes and best ways to get in and out. So and that's probably sitting in the drawer somewhere. It's probably changed a lot now, but we don't seem to be making any headway. And I think it was last time we had photos from Steve Bowden from Stratford about the bridge damage, and no one put their hand up. You know, I mean, it is pretty unacceptable to have that sort of response from a forestry industry. So how are we going to, or is there a way to progress getting some buyback? And Mayor Volsky talked about resilience and the emergency works and maybe putting something in place. This all has a bearing on that, because a lot of those roads seem to suffer more in that time of heavy rainfall, and how we can actually improve that situation, because there's no doubt, I mean, it's only a short time and the forest will be cut down and it's replanted again. In 25 years, we're back in the same cycle. So we really need to have something, and I know it's a problem across New Zealand, but what can we do to lead the forefront here in Taranaki and collectively? And maybe that's, we've got Vince in there as well, can answer sort of, it just annoys me that this just gets going on and on and on and on, and we don't seem to get a resolve.
Yeah, so we talk to each other, we know what is happening in each other's network, but it is something that needs to be taken at a higher level at the regional, through your leadership and councils as a region to deal with the situation. And, there were, talk about Tarata Road, for example, a third of the heavies come from Stratford. But we haven't got any ability to actually.
I don't want to get into a general fight.
But that's just an example of actually, if we were working together, we could have actually done something and started a long time ago. Things are happening now. The cycle is going to repeat itself in 25 years time. We should be collecting as a region a pot of money to deal with this regionally, and so we can deal with the situation. Tarata Road is going to cost us $20 to $30 million just to do that piece of road. We're not collecting that from forestry, and the benefits on the GDP. It's quite. You'd have to consider of the investment the council puts towards it for the income to GDP. So it is a tough decision, but I believe, like you said, that needs to be done at the regional level, at least on a regional level. It would be great if it could be done at a national level. But we keep on working doing the same thing, we'll have the same thing in 25 years' time. So you're right there, Tom. But it is at your level, then it's council levels and into regional that we need to have these discussions.
I do know that the mayors have been good advocacies for that specific shortfall in funding, especially and trying to keep those roads resilient, and they've done a lot of work in that area, but it tends to be really hard on their part to get any traction going forward. But I don't know whether they want to comment on that. Volsky, well, I know he's hot on this one too.
Yeah, just add to it. In our case, the Stratford District Council, we've introduced a differential rating rate, which applies to properties that have effectively forestry properties. There's actually not a lot of them. So when you're trying to gather a reasonable sum of money, the charge per property is quite excessive, and there's a lot of pushback, obviously, from those property owners. It's rating them in that way, as far as I'm aware, is the only tool that we've got to gather revenue from them. We just don't know other mechanisms. So it's a really blunt tool. It's not fair, but it's what we've got. We've raised this directly with him. He acknowledges that, and his advice was to use what you've got at the moment until something better comes along. So there is widespread recognition across the country that this is a problem. Property owners that are charged our rate and the same rate, Waitomo's just introduced one based on a similar basis, and ours is really a copy of others around the country as well. But it would be good if that was uniform across the region, which is obviously for councils north and south of here to make that decision. But the pushback is such from some people that they say if their property borders the state highway, and then they can drive from that point to the port on state highways. They never go on a council road, and therefore why should they pay the rate? That's effectively their argument. It's really complicated. There's a group of councils, and we're one. I think South might have joined as well. There was a group that did some work on forestry locations and how that could be managed better. And there was some reports done out of that. Came out roughly at the change of government time, and it hasn't really gotten back on the agenda again. But you're right, Tom. I mean, we're just repeating the same old. And until they change the funding mechanisms and the way that we can encourage drivers perhaps to go on certain routes rather than wreck every road, to pick an ideal road and use that one where they can, those kind of things. That's the sort of work that needs to be done. So.
When in Plymouth, it is the highest risk thing there is for holding our roads and for ratepayers and for funding, future funding.
I mean, if I may just add, it just fears me that we're going to go away from this meeting and probably the next one and the next one and the next one, and we're not going to make any progress. So I haven't got any answers, and I don't know where to go to try and get on top of the damage that has been caused, and it's willful neglect really of a lot of forestry operators.
Nixon.
So it does concern me.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. We are looking at what Stratford's doing at the moment in South Taranaki and possibly going to follow there. But one which is a possible answer, Councillor Cloak, is that I'm really keen on supporting is we're getting to the stage where we're talking about congestion charging and time of use charging and that sort of thing. So with E-Road and that, we know when and where vehicles are. And so I would certainly be wanting this committee to be supporting or even encouraging government to get on and look at it. Because to me, there's no reason why, and a little bit of what Mayor Volsky was just saying about charging for specific roads, through that electronic avenue, we would be able to know when they're on there. We could charge differently for different roads they're on, which would hopefully encourage them to be on other roads. But if they are on that funding hopefully could come back to the local authority to help with those roads. And so I think that is an option if we're able to move to it. It's not going to happen overnight, but I don't see any reason why it can't happen into the future.
Thank you.
Just one more question of you two. Was there any discussion about that with the Minister when you met with him? Sorry, Whanganui.
Last week?
Yeah.
No, it just wasn't time.
Okay, yeah. No, I just
got bogged down on a lot of stuff. But
yeah, no, that's all right.
It was on the list, but it was about number somewhere.
Well, you just got to pop it up the list.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very well aware of the list. Have been doing some good work, and hopefully, if there's anything we can do, hopefully let us know on this end as well.
Yep.
And we'll move on, Vincent. South Taranaki.
All right, thank you. Through you, Chair. I'll take it that our little small document has been read. And the most exciting thing that I've written there is that we have started to unbundle our road maintenance contract. And people tend to put it into one big one, and we're going the opposite way. And just want to see how this thing is going to pan out. And hopefully by doing that, we encourage smaller contractors to wade in and put their hands up and price our contract. So we might get some competition in, and hopefully that will drive the price down a little bit over the next few years. Because if we just continue with what we had before, we probably weren't able to fund it because the price coming back was quite high.
I think
in fact, very high.
I think that will be an interesting scenario to other councils to keep an eye on. I'm sure they will be.
Yep.
You know, local people, local knowledge, and all those things that go with that. So
yeah,
I think it'll be of great interest probably to the others going forward with that. I mean, Nixon, you wanted to?
Yeah, thanks, G. I just want to further comment with that. I'm pretty excited about this and to see how it pans out, because a lot of these local contractors that Vincent's talking about are doing the work now anyway, but the major contractor clips a ticket on the way through. And so, as Vincent said, we're hoping to see cost efficiencies in that with it through going to them direct and supporting local as a local authority rather than via a multinational contractor and let them get on with the bigger stuff.
Hold on.
Yep. You'll probably know in a couple of years' time whether I still got a job or not.
Well, we'll be heading to South Taranaki to try out your new road, so we'll watch this space.
All right. Yeah, probably time for retirement. All right. So that's what it is. And like for the other thing is that we got pretty good funding for our maintenance and renewal. So we got almost everything except a couple $100,000 shortfall in what we asked for. Just recently, last week, we got the news that we're not going to get any funding for our road widening, which we're a bit disappointed because road widening is part and parcel of how we do things here in South Taranaki, because we got 70% of our roads are very narrow, and we're slowly trying to get it wider. Otherwise, we got a lot of age break and potholes. So if the government don't want any potholes or age break, then we should fund some still widening as well. I don't know why we didn't quite meet the alignments of high there, but just probably got to talk to our investment advisor and see where we pitch it in a way that is incorrect or not. So that's all we can do at the moment, but I think that there might be some light at the end of the tunnel, because he mentioned about some resilient money that he may have that may fund some of this road widening and resilience type of work. I don't know how's that pan out, because previous year they said they have resilience money and then they don't have resilience money. So that's what I'm waiting for now, is whether we can get maybe a few $100,000 more into the coffer. Other than that, we're just programming our work. Our payment rehab work is pretty good, because we're probably putting out for tender within the next month and see what the price coming back and see whether they can do more stuff or cut back, because prices hopefully has either off and not going up too high recently, including the reseal work. Because we have interesting about the reseal is that our contractor who is head don't have any finger in the pie for the bitumen, and with the changes recently about the supply of bitumen, they just have to go with whatever that was given to them by the contractor that's selling them. So there's a slight price hike. So that's the other things that we got to look at. Other than that, I think I'll just keep soldiering on with the money that we got, and we get all the maintenance work done.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on with Stratford District Council. I don't do whether you want to highlight anything, Mayor Volsky or Councillor Harris, with regard to their
possibly just regarding funding. I think we received in all the categories bar one, we received what we actually asked for. So we were pretty happy with that overall. The notable exception being footpaths, where the budget was slashed dramatically. And in response to that, we pulled our footpath replacement program back just to match up to the funding that was available. Looking at the report here, just the pictures that Steve's provided for us. Obviously, illegal dumping, fly tipping has become quite prevalent in the area at the moment. First one there is a pile of nappies, and I'm looking at the volume on stage. She's probably got twins. There's a lot of nappies in there, but there's certainly rubbish everywhere. And that's been an ongoing problem. There's a few hot spots, but it costs to clean it up, and it really frustrates the hell out of people that they have the rubbish dumped on their backyards effectively. So that's an issue for us. And if you move through there's some pictures there showing some underslips that have been repaired, and there's one there, of course, with a digger on it and a retainer wall. And it just shows you the sort of road that we're talking about. And these are forestry roads. There's one there, Junction Road, which is not much more than a farm track looking at that. And the other ones that where the emergency works money and minor works money comes into play, and they're ongoing, these sort of underslips. I'm not sure how you prevent it. The bridge that Tom referred to earlier, well, there's been a little bit of progress there, and we've trying to claim back what we can get out of the whole thing. Just the other one I wanted to comment on was the road safety, which is on page 109, and this relates to changing the signs outside of schools. And within our district, there's 27 signs that would need to be changed, and a cost of between $400,000 and $540,000 for our district to do that. And again, no funding for that, but a change of government policies put that cost on us. So, and again, put it into perspective, $160,000 for Stratford District Council is 1% of rates. So you're looking at 3% just there.
Question.
Thank you. Councillor Donhaven.
Just in terms of that last comment, one of the things that the Prime Minister is obviously concerned about is the rises in rates, given this recent speech to local government New Zealand. And if you're having a 3% of increase in rates simply because of a change of the Minister's view on how things should be done, as he announced, would the Stratford District Council consider writing to the Prime Minister asking him whether or not they might provide an exemption for the Stratford District Council from changing a speed limit up to a higher and possibly more dangerous limit, costing your ratepayers 3% extra in rates to do so?
Certainly
happy to write the resolution for you, Councillor, if you'd like.
We have raised through you, Chair. We've raised it with the Minister, and his answer effectively was that it is what it is. We haven't raised it with the PM, but it's something we consider.
Thank you.
Good try, Harry. Yeah.
Councillor Harris.
Through you, Chair, if it's okay for me to add to the report.
Yes, certainly.
What His Worship has said. In response to what Councillor Cloak mentioned before about what else can we do about forestry, I think if you look on pages 107 and 108, the two images that relate to forestry damage, in my view, what we're seeing is the social license that forestry companies have has had a lens put over it in recent events, and they are starting to take notice of that and do as much as they can. That bridge on 107's been swiped 3 times, so on the 3rd time we managed to get somebody to come forward and say, how bad, let's fix it. So and then the image on 108, the actual damage was reported by the forestry company, and they also made offers to rectify it. So I think that's probably one positive that we've got happening at the moment. So keep it in the conversation and keep raising the issues.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And then we'll move on to the TRC update from our engagement manager. Cheryl, come and join us. Tell us about all the good things happening in the transport world.
Really only further to what's in the TAG minutes is that on Monday we did in fact go through the executive audit and risk, where approval was given in principle to the business case for us to carry on and move into the procurement phase. Business case has become more of a funding document or a phased approach document, as opposed to something that we're confident would get approved by NZTA. Straight to the high frequency that would desire, we are going to have to work through stages to get there. It's really it from me, unless you have questions.
So thank you. There's a huge amount of work has gone into that document that Cheryl and the team have put forward, and it's been quite a long road really to get that this far with the changes and changes in funding and everything. So I think they've come up with a fairly good.
Chair, if I might add just to Cheryl's update there, and I'll give a brief update on the Passenger Transport Joint Committee discussions. That is the terms of reference and the memorandum of understanding to establish a joint committee are proceeding through the various levels, and we're hopeful of this, either this current meeting cycle or the next meeting cycle, getting that through to the, at the very least, the Plymouth and District Council and Taranaki Regional Council committees, the invite to Waka Kotahi, Stratford District Council and South Taranaki District Council is standing there, and we'll loop back with those 3 bodies to see whether they wish to be part and parcel of that joint committee. So that is making good progress. All going well, we may even have a meeting this side of Christmas, which would be nice. I'm also cognizant of the fact that we're just finalising our annual report and just some quite positive statistics in the passenger transport area. We're up 77,000 passenger trips, which is about an 11% increase across the network. The two big increases are in the connector service, which is up 21%, and CityLink, which is up about 10% on usage. And those two cover the vast majority of our passenger trips. So a really good news story coming out of that. Again, just reflecting on the frustrations that we feel around our single stage business case not being able to take advantage of this growth and supplement that further. So just thought I'd add those comments to Cheryl's update, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions or points with regard?
Just a comment to that though is that connector service is certainly lifted, and I think we just thank NZTA for putting the best program they can into the work. The road closes up at Burgess Park, where closing it, opening in the morning to have all that bus service going up and then return on the way back. It hasn't been easy, but it really does help that bus service for moving so many people. So if it had been another option, that would have been a disaster. So the agency recognising the level of service that's coming to the south. I don't very often thank you.
We were all sitting here stunned.
Councillor Donovan.
Did you record that?
I'm not quite sure whether my hearing needs adjusting. I was going to ask Mr. Chairman in relation to that with the coming roadworks, and does that address that issue of so the buses will not have to go right round Egmont Road, or what is that, right?
Up in the morning, back down south.
They do return journeys, so yes, they are going there.
Only two.
Yeah, so they won't be affected by the road closures as such.
Anyone?
Through you, Chair, there'll be two, just the two services. The Inglewood 98 and another one that's coming in the other direction. But generally, NZTA were fabulous. We had lots of conversations about making sure the buses got through.
Brilliant. Well done.
Yeah, that's great.
Can I ask a different question? I know this was written before it went to your audit risk committee, and I haven't heard yet what the outcome was in relation to the proposal to have a direct linear service, a more frequent service as we proposed. Was that included in the proposal that went to your audit risk committee?
Through you, Chair. So we did discuss that. It's sitting outside of the business case.
Okay.
And speaking to Stuart and Aston, we have a meeting in about 2 weeks' time where we'll come for some proposals for that high frequency, high visible service.
Thank you.
So that is moving forward quite quickly. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Nothing further. Can I just have a mover that we receive the updates from the councils? Thank you, Councillor Cloak, seconded Mayor Nixon. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item, which is the NZTA Transport Agency update, which you'll find from page 113. With that, I'll pass it over to Mrs. Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. Noting that we are approaching 3, I'll try and keep it snappy, but I have to say, yeah, your team has covered a lot of mine, so maybe I don't need to do these so much anymore. Just want to acknowledge the launch of the National Land Transport Plan before we get into the presentation proper. The National Land Transport Programme for 24 to 27 is seeing a record 32.9 billion invested into the land transport system, alongside our co-investment partners to achieve the government's priorities for the land transport system. They're very clearly set out in the GPS, and specifically the number one priority there is on the state highway improvements to support economic growth and productivity. together with our local government partners. And also directly investing 10 billion towards improving the state of the asset and making our roads safer through better proactive maintenance. Specific to Taranaki, we're seeing 808 million invested over the next 3 years in the region. To put that in context, for the 21-24 NLTP, at time of adoption, it was 447 million. So a substantial increase in investment in both improvements, but also the maintenance and operations. Other highlights of note is the completion of the ceiling on State Highway 43, the continued construction of the Mount Messenger bypass, as well as continued work on safety improvements for Waitara to Belloc and New Plymouth to Hawera. I do just want to both acknowledge and touch on the comments, disappointment with regards to both low cost, low risk investment for local government and also walking and cycling. Both of these activity classes were under significant pressure due to the focus on the priorities for state highway improvements and also on maintenance and operations has meant that the activity classes are much nearer to the lower limit of levels of investment for those classes. And also as well, the walking and cycling, your pavement, both maintenance and also improvements now being in walking and cycling, that fund was very heavily committed already, so there was very little to go around. Just on the low cost, low risk, it is not an indication of the quality of your application. If you did not receive funding, it is because of how oversubscribed that activity class is. I think, don't quote me on the exact number, but I think only 13 or 14 councils across the whole country received low cost, low risk funding. So New Plymouth, you did well. It won't feel like it, but you did well. But yeah, it's not to do with quality of applications. I don't want you to think that. We will jump on now. Oh no, here we go. First up, first couple are just some general updates at a national level. Of interest is current hot topic time of use charging, alongside other funding and financing in our revenue review that's underway, which includes road user charging as well as tolling. This policy is currently a work in progress, and these are schemes that can be initiated by NZTA, but also by local authorities, and they will be developed in partnership with NZTA as a majority partner. Any scheme proposed would need to be consulted on prior to going to ministers for final approval. And Cabinet has actually instructed NZTA to begin the development of a single technology system that's suitable for use across all parts of the network. The one thing to really note here is that net revenue raised in a region gets invested back into the transport system in the region. So it's not the same as tolling, for example, where it just goes on the specific road that's tolled.
Oh, happy with questions going through?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Can you just what's the subtle difference between time of use charging and congestion charging?
So congestion charging tends to apply as essentially a variable charge on a set piece of road to encourage where there's high density of traffic movements, to encourage them to go on other parts of the network. It's primarily only used at peak times, and then it's off again. So it could be free and then it could be charged for. Whereas time of use charging can be variable rate charging. It can depend on the types of vehicles as well. So it provides a little bit more flexibility, and it's not necessarily just to say, don't travel between 7 and 9 on this road. Yeah, so a bit more flexibility, but I think how you can reinvest that revenue is critical.
Yeah. Is it, you mentioned that there was a proposal to develop one method of charging through the country. Will that be by number plate recognition, or will it be by transponder, or will the vehicles have some sort of interface with a recording system?
It's
we know
not
yet?
defined as yet, and it will be very similar to what we deploy from an efficiency perspective for tolling and for congestion potentially in Auckland. Whether it's similar to international systems where you get the little scanner and you stick it up at your rear view mirror, or whether it is on number plate recognition, I can't answer.
So it will be for all vehicles, motorcycles, trucks, cars, everything?
Yes, if you're on the road. Yes.
Horses as well, cycles.
So at the moment, much of this is in progress. The legislation is currently being drafted. It's expected to be introduced into the House and move into select committee by the end of this year. The timing of the implementation of this and any associated scheme is at the direction of the minister. The minister is quite clear that he expects this to be up and running by the end of 2027. So it's, fast pace. I feel like I'm incompetent with the clicker today. There we go. Consultation on setting of speed limits. I feel we've covered this, but I can just give an indication that we're looking and expecting an announcement on the rule by the end of the month, the beginning of next at the very latest, which will give us all clarity on what lies ahead.
So will this go back to a centralised managed system where we have a set of rules to apply? So we won't have local variation according to community desires.
Whether or not there's going to be a significant change to what's currently proposed, I think would be unwise of me to comment. I don't feel that what has been proposed in the draft rule is quite as restrictive as how you can or who gets to set the speed limits. Just what speed limits are set on what road are probably the most restrictive parts now. Next one, emergency works. We've covered this as well. I just want to make it really clear that while some immediate decisions were made after the 4-week submission process, the board have decided not to make a decision immediately on the qualifying event, so whether it's a 10 or a 20-year event, and also on the FAR rates associated with emergency works. We're expecting those decisions to be in by the end of 2024. The reason that they've delayed that decision is that they've asked for further work to be done as a result of the submissions. So they are seeking further work on financial implications for both NZTA and the NLTF, as well as for local government, some further meteorological reports to be done. And they're also working with with the Treasury to understand if there are any other appropriate sources of funding. So I can't give you any more clarity as yet, but just perhaps a little bit of comfort that the board are seeking further information before they decide on the way forward with that one. More local on this, pretty good progress across the board for the priority activities in the last RLTP, noting that some will continue on into the 24-27. Noting the Princess Street roundabout and the pedestrian underpass now open for Wairarapa Bell Block. And we had a very successful, I couldn't be there, just opening event to acknowledge that. And work is now underway on the second one on Waitara Road. I do need to just acknowledge the slightly misleading media coverage that has ensued about the changes to that project. It was a wonderful headline, but actually the substantive requirement for all of us is to look how we derive greater value for money out of the funding envelope, which for us is fixed. And we're working through those processes. So there will be and there needs to be design changes to ensure that it meets government priorities and the government outcomes, but things are not just cut off. I think that's the main one that I wanted to say in there.
I think a review of the traffic management plan might find you savings you want.
I would note that I have to commend our work with New Plymouth District Council, because I think collectively in pulling our stormwater work and that project together, there was over $500,000 saving in both traffic management and contractor costs.
I rest my case.
So we're learning.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay, state highway maintenance network ops for 24-25. I think the key thing that I've got to reinforce here is that there is a significant program of works over the next 3 years for the Taranaki region. And that's indicated by just how early we are trying to get started this year, with it kicking off in September. And some of the works we're aiming to get done before your event season as well. So the pressure is on. The construction season in this region is actually really tight because of both weather and your event season, as well as the mandatory shutdown periods. In addition to the normal kind of BAU maintenance work that we have planned, Taranaki is one of 3 regions that, if you like, are the first cabs off the rank for our new integrated delivery model, the first step away from our NOC contracts. And it's really interesting to hear the work that's happening in South Taranaki, as our integrated delivery model follows a kind of similar structure, in that we will still have one key supplier or private contractor for the region. They will still be able to subcontract, but we are building greater flexibility, commercial tension, and a look to kind of build up capacity in the contractor market by then contracting out discrete packages of work, so that it's not all just going through one main contract for the region. Now, you may have been aware that we have tendered out, it's just closed for a package of works for South Taranaki for this coming season. So what year is it, 24-25? The tenders have closed, and we're expecting to make some appointments very shortly. This sees full rehabs taking place, and this is to improve the state of your asset. We're doing the same in Waikato and also up in Northland. The sites, for if you're interested, it's between Waverley and the border with Manawatu. So it's Whenua-Kura, Waitotara Hill, Waitotara, Nukamaru Straits, and around the Waverley effluent site. And there's about 9 kilometres of full rehab. Needs done, we'll need support for a level of disruption over the kind of coming season. But this is just an indication of the level of investment that's coming into the region to improve the state highway. And we'll also be then out for 25-26 for a northern section for North Taranaki. And then we'll be doing the rest in the following. So it's a significant increase in the M&O season. It is going to be something for us to have to manage in how we go about this work, but as well, that package of works that I've indicated too, we'll be looking to roll out the new guide, the New Zealand Guide to Temporary Traffic Management, and how we approach that to manage costs, but also as well to begin to lift contractor capability in how they apply traffic management as well. I think this is the last one, pothole response. You will be aware that the government, we have the Pothole Prevention Fund, and also NZT have some very specific targets to achieve every month, and we have to report on them every month back to the minister. It's taken a bit of time to just work with our contractors on actually how we do that in not just an effective way, but also that's cost efficient as well. These are the stats for July. That's our first month in your region. Not a bad initial cut. We're expecting some continual improvements on that as we go. First up is good. I would say it wasn't quite as straightforward in Hawke's Bay. The other thing though that I would note is what this is requiring us to do is be really prudent with how we invest both the Pothole Prevention Fund and our network and our operations fund. We have to meet the expectations of the minister and the GPS, and that means all of our investment pretty much is going into these areas. What you will then see is we will be having to prioritise renewals, resales, and dealing with potholes over and above, say, the frequency of mowing, litter collection, sign cleaning, those things. So our cyclic maintenance, we're going to have to relook at the level of service there in order to do it. So there will be trade-offs. I know in areas like yourselves where you have high tourism, for example, there are some concerns around that, and we're just going to have to work together to make sure that we can use the money in the most effective ways so that we've still got a bit of pride in the network as well.
Can I ask a question?
And that's all from me.
Councillor Dinehaven has
just a quick question on the last slide.
Oh, yeah.
Which was about the completed column in the potholes.
Yes.
Pothole response. If the pothole is repaired and it's ticked off as completed, if it reappears tomorrow, in a short period, is that another pothole and therefore another tick in the next month's column, or is it a defect that, because we're seeing a lot of potholes, what I would call temporarily repaired. A bucket of hot mix is thrown at it, it's tamped down, and the truck drives away, and a week later you've got an equally big pothole in exactly the same location again.
So two things on that. This data includes any and all rework. If it falls between 1 and 31, it's counted in the same month. So that would be 2 potholes essentially on that basis. If it's, falls into the next month, it will be counted there as a new pothole.
So the minister will be able to say in a parliamentary question answer, well, there were 6,843 potholes repaired. Isn't that wonderful? Last year, there were only 1,040 repaired. Ignoring the fact that 3,000 of them were repeats of the same pothole.
No, our minister is very across the detail and understands how the system works, and that's why I can say with confidence that the aggregated data shows you the number that are completed, but if there are rework, he also gets that information.
It's going to be interesting to see how that ends out.
The other thing that I would say is, while this is, and to be very free and frank, this has been really complicated to work out, because you can imagine the monitoring that's required to do this. You could use all of your money just driving the network to assess it. But it has forced greater innovation into the system already through our tier 1 contractors and the purchase of new equipment and new machinery that doesn't require traffic management to operate, that can rehab the road in large, 3-meter sections all in one go, that can fill potholes or strips of road without people having to get out onto the road. So there's safety improvements as well. So we've seen, I think, 3 of those machines already enter into New Zealand. One's in Manawatu, Wanganui at the moment, one in the South Island and one in Waikato. So it's probably forcing the sector to step up to what we would see in other countries now. So yeah.
Excellent to see how that runs.
Excellent.
Just one quick question. At the beginning, you made mention of factors $808 million to be spent on regional roads. And previously it was 447.
Yes.
So it's what, 361 million increase, which is substantive. How much of that is going to be spent on Mount Messenger?
Well, the lion's share of it, that and the state highway maintenance and ops and pothole prevention are the largest components of your increase.
So I guess what I'm asking is, while that's a massive increase, if it's all focused on one project that wasn't there before, what's the net balance that's left to actually improve what we originally had?
I mean,
there's still some.
Yeah, definitely. But the lion's share is definitely your capital programme. So Waitara Bell Block, as well as Mount Messenger, but also the state highway maintenance budget is significantly increased. But not huge outside of that. You're quite right.
Thank you. Councillor Cloak.
Just a comment about your sort of roadside furniture maintenance and cutting back on the time frame. That happened some years ago, and it caused a significant problem with dirty marker posts and edge lines not being prominent enough, especially in the winter area. winter time and fog and etc., and also vegetation overhanging and sight lines and things like that. So I think you've sort of got to balance your safety of that into the program, because it could actually, and it did last time, cause quite a bit of problems with losing their way on the roadways.
Couldn't agree more. Yes, acutely aware of that. Yeah. I would just say one comment, the white lining part of it is a critical requirement or focus of how the government wants to achieve better road safety outcomes. But you're quite right in terms of vegetation, sight lines.
Just for clarification from that, so the white lines is in the maintenance, that's not been pulled back on.
White lines in terms of things like your ATP and your rumble strips, that's on the safety side, yeah. But it is more around weed spraying, verge mowing, that kind of thing, litter collection.
And Councillor Donohoe.
Yeah, just a quick update. We see wonderful videos, by the way, on Te Aota. But the Mount Messenger project, there's a lot of public interest in what the final cost is going to be. And given that most of that budget will be spent in the next 3 years, out of that 808 million, do we have a current estimate of what the expenditure will be by the completion of the project?
No, not until it's moved through the legal process. So we're still awaiting the High Court decision. It has been through the High Court. The appeal against the Environment Court ruling just a couple of months ago, and we're awaiting the final decision, at which stage we're aiming for the September-October board meeting for any additional costs that are incurred. I can't comment on how much extra it's going to cost at this stage.
So what's the current estimate?
Oh, off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
Thank you. And Mayor Nixon.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to the NLTP final decisions.
Yes.
Will come as no surprise to you. I'm pretty disappointed to see that.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. Does not have sufficient priority. Sorry, I'm talking about Fitzgerald Kerry Lane. Really, I'm talking about Fitzgerald Lane. I mean, we can have some slip areas for Kerry Lane, but really disappointed for the future of what's happening in that area and the resilience of State Highway 3. That, you know, there should have been some better consideration and perhaps funding for a roundabout to future-proof it. So, yeah, pretty disappointed there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, nothing further. I'll move the recommendations that we receive the update and presentation from NZTA. Moved Councillor Donohoe, seconded by Councillor Cloak. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. And the last item is really just the final decision notification on the National Land Transport Program on page 140.
Chair, this is here for our information at this stage. It's brand new, hot off the presses, and we'll take some time to digest it and work our way through any implications of that. Stuart may wish to make one or two brief comments, high-level brief comments. I don't know, but it's just there for information at this stage. You'd like to comment or?
I think I've said, what I need to at this stage. Thank you.
I ask one unrelated question before we finish? And that is, I understand that a lot of the government boards are being restructured, refreshed, I think was the minister's term. And in particular, the Minister of Transport has refreshed some of his boards. Is that having any effect on NZTA? Are there changes afoot there?
We did recently announce 3 new board members. Would have been a couple of months ago. So yes, we have had a bit of a refresh. Yeah,
that's completed.
Yes, at this stage, yeah. One step down, one end of term, one new appointment, and a new chair. Yes, and noting as well that our chief executive is elected to move on in February next year.
Okay, thank you. And I think with that national program, we'll so take a bit to digest it, and then there'll be stuff coming back out in the future.
I'll move the recommendations.
And Councillor Cloak moves to recommendations, seconded by Mayor Bolsky. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. One last thing, for police, anything you'd like to add, comment on?
Just wanted
Thank you for
to
your
introduce
presence.
Inspector Phil Ward. He's in the role for a year. Ash and Phil have swapped.
Thanks, Robbie.
That's convenient.
Yeah, we have swapped for a while. So look, yeah, I'm part of the district leadership team based out of Palmerston North or Manawatu, but road policing's been in my veins for 28 sort of years that I've been in the police as well. So a really exciting opportunity, and it just gives me a wonderful sort of chance to get out and have a bit more of a district-wide approach to my view, as opposed to just the Manawatu. So and I've said to Robbie, we'll make sure that we're a standing fixture at these meetings going forward, like they are elsewhere as well. So, yeah, we've been through a bit of a period of change as well with our new district commander, and like everything else, when that happens, there's a bit of a changing, the shuffling of all the chairs on the deck, so to speak. So, yeah, at least it'll provide some consistency for the next 12 months being in this role anyway. So I'm aware that, we've probably been absent at a few meetings over the last while. There's been a bit of a shuffle around, and now we've got some fairly firm targets from the NZTA and some road policing plans in place now in the district, where we can share those going forward in the next few meetings if you're interested.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presence. Thank you for coming along. We look forward to seeing you at our ongoing meetings. So, thank you. So with that, we have our next meeting is the 5th of December at 1. And we'll finish with our closing karakia, which you'll find just in front of you.
Ora, kaha, oraya, kirana, kiraro, kiroto, kiwaho, rere.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes.
I will only get to.
No, but it was all right.